Back to LillySquared,
a video podcast by women for women.
So a little recap from last week. We did attend the Laura Oakman boot camp Tuesday night, and it was a small group of us journalism women, and oh my gosh, so amazing, but we'll get more into it later.
So this week, I know we touched, last week we touched on the aspect of body image and how a way that the media makes women athletes feel how they should portray themselves. So we thought we would connect that a little bit by talking about mental health this week. And I feel that mental health is a subject that recently has gotten a lot more attention, and there has been, I think, more and more conversation around the subject in recent years. I know many people that unfortunately suffer from mental health issues, and including myself.
For sure, and I can say that I'm someone who struggles with mental health as well. And when someone does struggle with mental health, it is not often obvious. I would never have guessed that Lily struggled with it. If someone is struggling internally, other people may not always notice either. And that's why it's so important to bring awareness to this issue that many are sometimes uncomfortable or afraid to talk about it.
Exactly. And it's unfortunate that sometimes people may not feel that they have that support system. And I think we can extend that all the way down to athletes, whether that be high school, college, or of course what we always talk about, professional sports.
Yeah.
Individuals who are fans, who are sitting in the stands, watching on the television, listening on the radio, just perceive those individuals playing that sport as just athletes, and maybe sometimes not actual people, and not realize that they have an outside life that involves family, friends, etc., and that may have issues going on, and we don't know that as sports fans.
For sure, I completely agree. We can tend to forget that professional athletes, especially, they have a life more than just their sport. They have outside life too that involves hobbies, family, friends, whatever it might be. Their entire life isn't just their sport.
And in my opinion, I think mental health with professional athletes, like I said in the beginning, has gained more attention. And especially this year and the past year, it's a noticeable difference how many more athletes have come forward and talked about stepping away from their sport because of things that are going on mentally. For example, we can mention Simone Biles. We have talked about her for many weeks because she's just such an aspiring professional woman athlete. And she's one of the athletes that has stepped away from the biggest stage in professional sports, and that was the Tokyo Olympics. And she did it for her mental health.
And that must have been one of the hardest decisions that she will ever make in her life and career, but it was definitely the right one. I mean, she showed she was resilient and brave enough to put herself first over her sport, and that's hard to do on that stage.
I agree, and I can't even imagine having that label of being the best gymnast in the world. That title comes with many benefits, but also I just can imagine just how much struggle and pressure she feels carrying that title. And it's just, she always looks so calm and confident and collected when she's performing on the gymnastics platform, and I don't think about really how she's actually feeling.
And without her reminder, I think fans would still have been lost in knowing that superstar athletes like her struggle with mental health as well. It was amazing to see her praise all the support that she had gotten over her decision. Many other superstar athletes like Naomi Osaka, Ali Raisman, Serena Williams, and her family and friends showed support to her decision.
Which I think is really relieving, to see that occur, because saying that over social media platforms, you can get any sort of feedback back, whether that be good or bad. And I think her having a support system, if she didn't have that support system, it would have made it 10 times harder for her to come out with that decision. And that is another reason why I think so many more athletes are comfortable with the fact expressing their stances on mental health, because Simone Biles was the one that was very publicized, I feel because it did involve the Olympics.
Yeah. And according to the website Athletes for Hope, there is a high number of individuals that suffer with mental health. 33% are college athletes, while 35% are professional athletes. There's most likely a higher percent of athletes that do suffer, but may not be comfortable speaking out about it to make a statement
their
experience.
Or anything.
Yeah.
And so that makes me put into question, does this professional sports platform cause a condition of mental health within athletes? And I actually took a lot of time to think about this, because I played softball forever, and I remember like feeling like burnt out and stuff, but I also like know that sports do help a lot. I know it did for me. Sports helped me manage stress, time management, boosted my confidence.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, like I did feel burnt out and drained. And for other athletes, it could affect them negatively, especially on the professional side. They can be predisposed to depression, anxiety, eating disorders. And like I said, like their teammates, coaches may not realize that because they're constantly in this sports environment that it may just like seem normal to them.
And something that I will mention on the page of that is I was a former D1 athlete last year for KU, and I was not the only one on my team who struggled with mental health. And they had therapists for us, like they have the resources, but it only goes so far when you devote all your time and everything into a sport, and it is truly hard. It is hard. And I mean, for women, as we mentioned last week, it can be hard for them not to compare themselves to other women based on their body type, self-image, body disorders, which are also contributing factor to their mental illness.
And overall, I want to like jump back on to like how you mentioned how you're a D1 athlete. Like sometimes just you don't know if you have that support system because you're putting, and you don't always necessarily like step back to realize I may need a break because you're constantly like putting, like you probably put all your time into your sport at the college level.
Yeah, and I mean, don't even get me started. Like, I ultimately did have to step back away and say, I can't do this. I need to prioritize myself, my mental health, and my school. And my priorities were not right. My plate was full, and I had to step back and say, you know what? I need help. And I'm glad that I recognize for myself that I need help. And I want other women and male and professional athletes, literally anyone, to realize that it is okay to get help.
And I love that you did that for yourself, and now you're doing this, and we're bringing awareness to the issue. So some alternate points that I did want to mention, like going back on the professional side, is the spotlight and the pressure that these athletes are facing. Like at the end of the day, it's their job.
Yeah.
And an injury or like a game winner could cost them that.
Yeah.
So they're constantly feeling that pressure.
And I mean, I want to go back onto that too, because like we said earlier, people don't see them as someone who is not an athlete. They just see him as an athlete, they play the game, whatever. I see people, I did get into a debate one time with someone about Simone Biles, and they were just like, that is so weak, that's so pathetic, like, are you kidding me? Why is she saying that? And I got into it because I struggle with it, and I don't like talking about it sometimes for certain people. And I was like, you have to understand the amount of courage that it takes for her to say that. And the athlete that she is, for her to go and perform at this level, like, you go do what she does, and then you let me know how you feel.
How you feel about, like, probably needing to step back.
Exactly.
You can't, she's just the greatest gymnast in the world.
Exactly.
And people that aren't professional in that aspect shouldn't have a comment on it.
They should not.
And it's normal for, like, I feel like it should be normalized. Stepping back is okay. And it's okay for upsets to occur. It's okay that injuries happen. But if you're the person that messes up, like, it goes back to the media. You're going to be talked about.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I remember Simone Biles, like, her story was talked about for ever, like weeks, because the Olympics were still going on when she stepped back. And that was the headline and story that everyone wanted to talk about. And I feel like if I put myself in her shoes, I would feel like, wow, like, I don't know if this was the right decision or not. I would have felt just
so lost.
Lost, exactly.
Yeah. And pressure is definitely different on professional platform versus collegiate platform. Messing up could cause you your job or even an injury related to anxiety disorders or mental health disorders in general. I mean, it's a mess. But I want those athletes to be able to speak freely on their mental health and not receive backlash from it.
Exactly. So going off of that, Soleil is now on Jayhawk Boulevard asking students their stance if professional sport platforms cause mental disorders within professional athletes.
Thank you, Soleil.
Thank you for that insight on the people you interviewed. It was interesting to see how high percentage numbers that were given to us for feedback. Some said 60, others said 70, and then others just said a lot. And like we mentioned, it was a lot lower than that. But I think if all professional athletes came forward and stated whether they were suffering or not, that percentage would be a lot higher.
Yeah, I agree.
So right now we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, Soleil will break down all the latest news in KU sports.
No one takes drugs expecting to become addicted. You should know that addiction can happen to anyone because it's a disease of the brain. That also means recovery is possible. Addiction doesn't have to be permanent, and the state of Kansas is ready to assist you in every step of the way. Visit findtreatment.gov or call the Kansas Substance Abuse Referral Line at 866-645-8216.
Welcome back to another KU Sports Recap. This past weekend, the Kansas Jayhawks traveled to Stillwater, Oklahoma to play Oklahoma State. Once again, the defense had a hard time holding the OSU offense. In the first quarter, the Cowboys scored 2 touchdowns and a field goal within 5 minutes. The Jayhawks were still not on the board. The second quarter came around and Kansas defense could not hold them until they scored 3 touchdowns in the quarter. After halftime, the Jayhawks finally got on the board with a 45-yard field goal by Jacob Borcilla. Just when you thought it could not get any worse, the Cowboys then scored 2 more touchdowns. The final score of the game was 3-55. This week, the football team will host the Sunflower Showdown against Kansas State. Well, folks, that time of the year is finally here. The basketball team has their first home game tomorrow against Euphoria State. Students have been camping all day to score some nice seats. With the basketball season only 24 hours away, Jalen Wilson was arrested early Sunday morning for suspension of driving under the influence. Authorities confirmed that they observed a driver not maintaining a proper lane change and stopped the car. Officers performed a sobriety test and Wilson failed, putting him into custody. Around 4:45 that morning, Wilson was released on bond and was given a future court date. Bill Self is aware of the situation has said that they will determine potential consequences for him once they have the rest of the details. Well, that is all of the sports recap that I have for this week. Join us next week as we discuss his consequences. Now over to Lily with the NFL recap.
Welcome back to Week 8. Yes, it's already Week 8, and the NFL season is getting super close to that halfway point. What happened this week? Well, upsets occurred, injuries happened, and the quickly approaching trade deadline has caused some drama. So let's waste no more time and get right into it. Well, it was a great day to be an NFL QB backup. The Saints, Cowboys, and Jets all missed their star quarterbacks, but all 3 teams were able to win with their backups and against good teams too. For starters, the New York Jets upset the Bengals in Sunday's Halloween matchup. Zach Wilson was out with an injury and it was time for backup Mike White to step up. White's performance was one of the best performances by a backup QB who was getting his first start. He threw for 405 yards and 3 touchdowns. White also kept the Bengals on their heels all day. He completed his first 11 possessions and came out with a completion rating of 82.2%. Sure, he still had 2 interceptions, but it was not all his fault. Both of those interceptions resulted from the football bouncing off the receivers. Overall, Mike White looked like a veteran QB on the field. There was nothing more he could have done in that game. He was patient in the pocket and did not look startled when he was pressured. And does this win mean everyone is starting to ask who Mike White is? However, he is tied with QB Trevor Simmon this week for the best performer. The third-string backup Trevor Simmon had to step in 17 minutes after Jameis Winston was knocked down on the turf by a Tampa Bay linebacker. Simmon had not started an NFL game in 4 years, and his first appearance in 2021 meant going up against the 7-time Super Bowl champion Tom Brady. At this point, Saints fans might have thought they were doomed. However, this did not faze Simmon as he played fairly well against the Buccaneers. He was 16 for 29 for 159 yards and led a scoring drive downfield that ended up in a touchdown. Brady had the opportunity to answer back, but ended up throwing a pick 6 to P.J. Williams in the final 2 minutes of the game. And without the scoring drive by Trevor Simmon, the Saints probably would have not ended up stealing a victory. This was not only a victory for the Saints, putting them at a record of 5-2, but it proved how relentless this NFL team can be. Now let's talk Thursday night football. And why was that night so significant? Well, it means that there are no longer undefeated NFL teams. That's right, the 7-0 Cardinals were knocked down to 7-1 after the Green Bay Packers beat Arizona 24-21 in a dramatic Thursday night matchup. It needs to be noted that the ending seemed to come right out of a movie. Rasul Douglas was only on a practice squad. The Packers signed him just 3 weeks off the Arizona practice squad, ironically enough. Come Thursday night, Douglas not only played against his former team, he also made the play that ended the Cardinals' perfect season. So let's break down this play real quick. Arizona was only down by 3 in the fourth quarter, and with 3 minutes and 23 seconds left on the clock. They started to get a good drive going, which resulted in 94 yards, and all of a sudden, the Cardinals were on the Packers' 1-yard line. But then it happened. It was 2nd and goal, and the play started on the Cardinals' 5. Murray attempted to hit receiver A.J. Green on the right side of the end zone, but it did not seem that A.J. Green and Murray were on the same page because A.J. Green never turned around to catch the ball. But we all know who got their hands on the ball. That's right, Rasul Douglas. The catch and miscommunication allowed for the Packers to survive and ended Arizona's perfect season. Now, before I end this recap, I want to talk about the NFL trade deadline. The trade deadline ends at 4 p.m. today. The biggest drama started yesterday with the news of the 8-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl MVP, Von Miller. He was traded to the Rams yesterday afternoon. And what did the Broncos get for the trade? Only a 2nd-round pick and a 3rd-round pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. Next, 36-year-old Adrian Peterson made headlines as the news spread about him being signed to the Titans practice squad. The Titans most likely made the decision based on Derrick Henry's injury. The powerhouse RB is getting foot surgery, and it's projected that he will be out for 6 to 10 weeks. Big loss for the Titans. Finally, right before the show went live, news broke about Jalen Smith being cut from the Green Bay Packers just a few weeks after he signed with the team. There is no news about whether or not the linebacker would be signed by any other NFL team. Will there be more drama before the trade deadline is over? Well, NFL fans will just have to wait and see. Now, that is all I have for this week's recap. We will take a short break, and Lily will be back to break down her thoughts on fantasy football.
For students searching for a way to stay active in an outdoorsy way, the City of Lawrence has bike trails running in every direction, and with the new bike share program, we can stay in shape as we tour the sights of our beautiful city. Clinton Lake is only a short 30-minute bike ride away from Daisy Hill and has the most incredible sunset location in all of Lawrence. Walking campus may give you the KU calves, but biking can give you the KU thighs. Bike Lawrence today.
What's up, everyone? Let's get right into your Week 8 update, and let's get ready for Week 9. First of all, I do want to mention that these are interesting times in the leagues right now with the injuries and the trade deadline on the table. I mean, when Lily was doing her NFL recap and was talking about the Broncos trade, I can't help but to laugh. I think it's ridiculous. Why are you trading him for 2022 second-day picks? I mean, what is that? Is this a joke of a franchise? I mean, come on. And the Chiefs yesterday looked horrible again. I told my guy friends on Sunday, I was like, you guys, don't be surprised if the Chiefs lose or win by a little bit. And they're like, Lily, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you guys, they're horrible and barely got away with a win. But anyways, let's get back into it. So with the trade deadline on the table, prompting an interesting pickup from the Titans, who added veteran Adrian Peterson to their practice squad and without a doubt will soon activate him to their active roster. With the news that Derrick Henry will subdue to foot surgery this week and no timely comeback, the Titans, and I mean within a couple hours, snagged Peterson. So for your waiver wire pickups for this week, is he worth rostering? Let's get into it. Adrian Peterson, running back for the Tennessee Titans, who is currently rostered in 0.1% of fantasy leagues right now. Now, this could be quite possibly an example of a player signing that is much better in the name than the impact. There are enough variables in play to note that we do not know if it is certain how Peterson will fit into Tennessee and just how much time it will be until the 36-year-old comeback will actually play. However, if a role exists for Peterson, that includes 12 to 15 carries per game behind a stout offensive line and a potent offense. And I do believe there's enough value to take a look. We're at the point of the season where most waiver claims come with some baked-in risk, and Peterson is part of that group. If there's any possible floor here that makes him worthwhile enough to consider in any league. Next up, I suggest Boston Scott, running back for Philadelphia Eagles, rostered in 4.5% of ESPN fantasy leagues. With Miles Sanders on the injury reserve, we knew the Eagles would have to make some sort of adjustment to their backfield. While they do have Kenneth Gainwell, he has hardly played, and when he does, there's little to no time left. But Boston Scott and Jordan Howard have both found the end zone twice. Scott looked to me like the best runner for Philly on Sunday, and while Howard could steal goal line work, I do believe Scott is the more complete player. So I'm prioritizing Scott, while nothing that the game script in Week 8 was extremely favorable. But he is a must-add and someone to consider. Next ones I'm not going to go super in-depth about, but you must consider taking a look at these players. Taysom Hill, quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. I've mentioned Darnell Mooney before for the Chicago Bears, but he keeps improving, so I will keep mentioning his name. And Pat Freiermuth, tight end for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But that is all I have and for you guys for fantasy football segment today. But don't go anywhere because I'm still right here with fantasy basketball. The NBA season is still young and producing many interesting storylines and prompting questions already. Why do the consensus favorites to win this season's championship, the Nets, Lakers, and Bucks, have almost as many 10 combined losses as they have wins, which is 11? Someone tell me. Also, check out the Raptors. They are plus 10,000 to win the Atlantic Division, even though they're currently only on a half game out from first place. And the best player hasn't even played yet. Come on, people. They might have a shot here. Also, I'm a diehard raging Nuggets fan, so watch out, people. Don't continue to sleep on us, and don't even make the argument that Jokic is the worst MVP because that man deserved it more than anyone else. Ugh, don't get me fired up. Back to the side of fantasy. At this point of the season is trying and figure out and get in front of everyone else by adding people to your roster before your buddies hop on it in your league first. Let's take a look at another handful of players that could help your team and rostered in less than 20% of ESPN fantasy leagues. First, I suggest Franz Wagner for the Orlando Magic. Wagner is considered a project lottery pick in the 2021 NBA draft, needing to develop for a season or two before making his impact. Definitely not the case here. Wagner is off to a stellar start in his NBA career, having scored in double figures in each of the first 8 games, including 28 fantasy points on Monday, which raised his scoring average to 15.6 points per game. Might I also add that he's shooting 50.5% from the field. Wagner is contributing right now as a key starter on rebuilding, but he should only get better with experience. Next, I suggest Darius Basley, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Basley has recently showed signs of breaking out of his season-long shooting slump with at least 15 points and 3-pointers in his last 2 of 3 games. His stats are already showing strong numbers this season, so if he gets his shot straightened out on a Thunder team that's desperate for scoring, Basley would have plus value in all fantasy basketball formats. Next ones I'm not going to go super in depth about, but here are 3 more considered players adding to your roster. Jalen Brunson, Dallas Mavericks, Eric Gordon, Houston Rockets, and Luke Kennard for the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, this includes my fantasy segment for this week, but stay tuned next week for some more fantasy advice. Now, Soleil is standing by with Pamela Urlacher to discuss the Laura Oakman Bootcamp after this short break.
You may not hear it at first, but it's there. Our chant, rising. On this summit, callings converge, voices unify into a chorus that sounds out for good, for greatness. Can you hear it?
Welcome back. I am here with Pamela, who is Laura Oakman's right-hand woman at KU. Hi, Pamela. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for being here. Last week, Pamela and I were partners in Laura Oakman's workshop. We got very close and personal to get to know each other. What is it like working with Laura Oakman?
Laura Oakman is one of those women that really just takes the field by storm, and she gives everybody the opportunity to kind of give their own ideas and open up and just be the person that they are. So working with her has been one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. I've been able to open up and really look at the field from a different light, and there's no outside pressure except to just be yourself and do things the way you want to be done, but also to be your most successful and better self.
Absolutely. She is such an inspiring woman.
Yes, she is.
As women, do you see women coming together in a male-dominant sport?
I do, and I feel like being able to come together as women, but also make sure that we are bringing men into the equation to make it a more inclusive field and really be able to create those connections between men and women in the field, but really also understanding that women need to support women in order for this to be successful. We need to make sure that we are a unit, but also make sure to incorporate men into the field so that one day there's no longer this battle between men and women in sports. It's just people that love sports and get the opportunity to work for them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can you explain how impacting her workshops are?
So I have been a part of, I want to say 10 or 11 workshops. I have worked quite a few of them, and I've been a part of them and actually been a boot camper. And those workshops, the working with the teams and being able to work with players and do the collaborations has been phenomenal. But I think the most impactful thing is the sisterhood that has really come out of her company, because I look around and I know that I have at least 100 women or more that are willing to support me, and that I could pick up the phone and call at any time, whether it's sports related, work related, or just something going on in my personal life. And I know that I'm fully able to have these conversations, and because of these boot camps, these relationships have grown, and it's really neat to be able to watch women all over the country come together and push each other to be their best person and really put their best foot forward for each other. And so that's really been the best impact of her boot camps and just kind of what they mean to me.
Absolutely. I can say after the boot camp that the J School women and I have definitely become part of that sisterhood. Well, that's all the questions that I have for you today, Pamela. Thank you so much for being here. On behalf of the LillySquared production team and I, we are so thankful for Laura Oakman and us for giving us the opportunity to attend her workshop. That will close up today's show. See you guys next week. Bye.